Welcome to the Question Leadership Podcst. My name is Christy Beyer, Director of Athletics at Rockhurst University. I have proudly served as an NCAA Division II student athlete, coach, and administrator. I am also a proud graduate of the 2019-2020 NCAA Pathway Program. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for my Pathway experience. Through the process, the mentors effectively prepared us to not only attain the AD role through the interview process, they also prepared us to be effective leaders once we were in position. Having gone through the programming, I felt confident in my leadership skills as I became an AD for the first time. I want to thank the NCAA and all of the Pathway mentors for investing in the next generation of leaders. Enjoy the episode.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the Question Leadership Podcst, where we highlight executive leadership in college athletics. I am joined today by Dr. Patricia Raube Keller. Dr. Keller is a professor at Boston College in their master's program in sport management. I'm going to allow you to correct all the title things for me so we can get that right. But in general, most part, that's what I know about you. Tell me a little bit more about what you do at Boston College so that the introduction will be proper.
Sure. I am the program director of the Master's in Sports Administration program and now the new Master's in the Sport Analytics program. Okay. All our faculty work in the sports industry, so they're all part-time. And then I manage everything from the recruitment, the advising, I train the faculty, and then I do all the student things, all the experiential learning, everything.
So you're the only full-time?
Faculty, the only full-time member of the program. So all my faculty all work in the sports industry and they're an expert in the class they teach.
Oh, wow. So it's really practical education.
It's very practical, but most of them have a PhD or a JD or an MBA. They're very educated too.
So looking at your background, we were an athletic trainer right out of college, yes?
Yes, right out of college I was an athletic trainer because back then that was the only major. You were either the PE teacher or the athletic trainer. They didn't really have sports management back then.
Yeah. And did that for a couple years.
I did for 3 years at a very big high school in North Carolina.
Okay. And I imagine you thinking, okay, this is just a step to work in sports, or were you thinking like, I actually want to help people with their bodies? Like, tell me about the initial thought on that athletic training.
Well, when I was in high school, I was a lifeguard and EMT, and I was really good in emergency situations and just helping people. I think the big thing was just always helping people, and I could do it in that lens. But you're not exposed to many things. I grew up in a very rural town in Northwest New Jersey. There wasn't, we didn't even have a high school athletic director. Like, they just winged it. So, I didn't know that those jobs existed, and I went to a small Division III school in North Carolina, and I played soccer and lacrosse there, and my work study job was in the athletics department, and I just helped them with everything. And the athletic trainer there, Chris Grill, kind of just took me under his wing, and that's how I got pulled into the major.
Oh, okay. Well, that's excellent. So then you start thinking about your career from there. Looks like you went to student athlete development or services, academic advising.
And compliance.
Got into compliance. Yep. How many years total in college sports, including junior college?
16 years.
On the campus.
16 years. And, from working at Campbell University in North Carolina to Rutgers Camden to Rowan to University of Mary in North Dakota. And then I switched over to being a faculty member when I adopted my daughter from foster care.
Yeah. Because you wanted to be present, I guess.
I wanted to be present. Yeah. It was very hard being a senior associate AD at a D2 school and being a good mom.
Right.
So
I know people with Division I work all the time. So being at a Division II, being in the leadership team, you probably work double time because you were probably doing a bunch of different roles, right?
Because not only was I doing student athlete services and compliance, I was also the director of PE and health. So I managed the whole master's and undergrad PE and sports administration degree. And then there's only 4 staff members, so we all chipped in with game management. So I was at almost every game, and we had 19 sports.
Yep. How is your daughter now?
Dana is 15. She is an excellent volleyball player. She's got a 3.9 GPA. She's Miss Teen Shrewsbury. She has big goals to go to Dartmouth or Boston College to be a forensic nurse.
Oh, yeah? She's an athlete?
She's an athlete. She's very much an athlete. She plays volleyball. She's a setter. She's the starter as a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
So
that's exciting. To be present, right? to change careers so you can be present in your daughter's life?
Yes.
Or just in your children's
coached
life?
her in like everything from soccer to softball to basketball. And, we started playing volleyball, and because of her, she was in foster care until she was 4.5, and she'd already been in 5 homes. So she doesn't like people touching her. So when basketball and soccer got very handsy, she kind of like, I think her passion for those sports waned, but that's when her passion for volleyball really picked up, because they're not fighting over the volleyball, right? So and as the setter, she really directs the court, and she is very wise beyond her years.
Yeah, that's excellent. At some point during your career, you decided that doctorate was necessary. Tell me about what led you to do that. And then I think your research was something about women from marginalized communities excelling in sports. I might have that wrong, but correct me on that. Yeah.
Well, I was at Rowan University, and I think I was one of the youngest assistant athletic directors in the country. And my bosses in our 60s, and our 3 other senior associates were all older, like way older than me. And I always called the kid in the office, and I was doing all this stuff, and their promotion wasn't going to be something that probably was going to happen at Rowan. And then as a woman, it was going to be hard. And I remember some of my mentors saying to me, you have to be better than the men. So what can you do that rises you above that, right? Because you're young right now. So I was working with Dr. James Coxum. He was the director of the Educational Leadership Doctorate program at Rowan. He was just helping some of our student athletes. And he said, you should get your doctorate. So I applied, and I didn't get in the first cohort. They only took 2 people for Rowan a year. And then I got in the next year and started pursuing my doctorate in education leadership. And my dissertation was about the marginalization of women working in college athletics.
Oh, marginalization of women working in college athletics.
I interviewed probably 60 women in all kinds of jobs in college athletics, and really learned what the avenues and paths were to get the job they did, and found the themes of what worked and what did it. And then as a leader, how could I apply that knowledge that I gained? So then I started doing seminars for younger girls who wanted to work in sports, but I use that research is probably what's made me really, really good at my job now, because I made tons of connections doing that, but I really learned these are the things you need to do if you want to work in sports, right? This is what works.
Do you still see women being marginalized in college athletics?
I do. I think it's different than it used to be. I think sometimes it's even more subtle than it used to be. I do see, in Division III, you do see more women as athletic directors, and the career path for the AD has always been the fundraiser, and many times that revenue generation person are men. Women are kind of pigeonholed into the student athlete services, into the compliance, those helping areas, and they're not the roles where you see people rising up to be the athletic director. But I've noticed those people, when they are the athletic director, do a really good job, because you're managing people and the people things. And sometimes the fundraisers don't have that experience of managing the coaches and the student athletes, and they struggle in that area.
Yeah, very interesting. We get this doctorate, we become faculty throughout our career, right? As we're working at college athletics, and then we get to Boston College as we'd say program director?
Program director. So any other school, I'd be the department chair.
Okay. And did they recruit you to come and run the program, or tell me about how you got to that?
So Jocelyn Gates at the time was the senior women's administrator at Boston College, and Maggie McKinley is still the senior women's administrator at University of Cincinnati, and they were friends. So Maggie mentioned to me hey, I heard they're doing this job at Boston College.
You were at Cincinnati for a little bit.
Yeah, I was at Cincinnati teaching for 5 years. I was a clinical faculty member, and that was interesting, because I couldn't really get promotion or tenure because I was a clinical faculty member. But I was teaching 12 months of the year. The research faculty were teaching 9. I was teaching 4 classes a semester. That was a lot. And doing all the experiential learning with the students. And honestly, I don't think I was getting treated for my value. So I started looking. I was going to go back to college athletics. Dana was in a good spot. I could, she needed a lot of love and care when we first got her. And I was finalist to be an AD at a couple schools when the job at BC crossed my desk. And I have a mentor. His name's Bob Boland. He teaches law at Seton Hall, but was the athletic integrity officer at Penn State. And he was like, you really need to apply for this job. This is perfect for you. It lets you use your leadership skills, your recruiting skills, your student services skills, all in one job. So, and that's where I think I really wanted the opportunity to lead something, to grow it, and to let those skills that I have shine. I've always felt like I had a leash on other places, and at BC I don't have a leash on.
Was the program already in place?
It had been around since like 2019, but it was kind of just there. They kind of made it. They didn't really have anyone leading it that really knew anything about sports. They were just offering some classes. They had about 35 students in the program.
And what year did you get there?
2021.
Okay, so the program was only a couple years old. So you come in and you have to basically build it.
Yes. So I looked at the course offerings and I sundown 3 of the classes.
Yeah. Is that what it's called in academics?
Sundown them. So, and I changed some faculty to people that really worked in the sports industry, really knew what they were doing. And then I added like a name, image, and likeness class. I added a globalization of soccer class. We've added the business of the NFL class. We added a class called issues and challenges affecting the student athlete. So we really added classes that are relevant in today's world you're going to learn a lot, but it's also so applicable. And because students have gotten that knowledge and those connections from the faculty, they've gotten jobs from that.
Yeah. So what I find interesting about your program, especially because everybody who teaches is a practitioner, I find that valuable, especially when you talk about sports, because some programs are heavy research, and while research is important, is that going to get you a job in sports, right?
Probably not. And it's not, I mean, we're Boston College. I mean, our courses are challenging academically, but our students don't do they can, there is a choice to do the dissertation. I've had students go on and want to get their PhD. We give them that option. I really try to meet the students where they're at. So every one of our students can either do a internship capstone, or they can do an action research project where they work with a sports organization to do a project there to really showcase their skills. But we also have a business plan. And one of the cool things about the business plan is students are entrepreneurs. And Charlotte North is one of the best lacrosse players ever, and she came out of Boston College. She did the business plan, and the Women's Pro Lacrosse League pretty much was part of her business plan. So it's pretty amazing where you see some of these students start fleshing this stuff out and what can be through their business plan. But like, we make them really, that business plan is a lot. Those things turn out to be like 150 pages.
So that's the question I have. I was thinking as I was getting ready to talk to you this morning. People can, you can get a bunch of degrees and learn a bunch of things, but sometimes you want to hire skill, like you want to get skill. And when you look at, when I came into a place, like I come into the program and when I leave the program, what is the difference between me now, right? Other than just a degree, what skill do you believe people leave your
program? Not only are they getting skills, our students are learning R and Python and Canva and all those kind of like technical skills, but they're learning the soft skills that I think that our students are really missing. And it's even like public speaking and negotiating and networking and, collaboration with a team. Like, I think students hate group projects.
Really? I used to love them.
And that's what I know. And I feel like the referee sometimes is doing them, but like we make them do that. I'm like, you're going to always work at a team at work, and you have to work with your coworkers. So you have these group projects, and, and it's even about communication's really big. We really talk a lot about being good communicators and what does good communication look like. And our students in our program for 18 months, and I tell them all the time, I said, I'm going to correct you. I'm going to correct you in private, but I go, we're going to correct you because you're not being told these things. You're not being coached on these things. Even what you wear and how you dress and how you present yourself, you can keep going on like that. And you're going to be like, why can't I get a job? Because no one cares enough to say something to you and just like, try doing this instead, right? So I do that a lot with our students. Our faculty do that with our students. We even tell the students, like, we don't take late work. I said, but things happen. We don't take it, but you also have a responsibility to email us and tell us what's going on, so then we can give you the grace to give you an opportunity to turn something in late, right? I said, that's what your job is like. I go, things happen in life. And when I worked in Division 2 and Division 3, and my husband had a heart attack. Like, the rest of my staff picked up my slack for like 3 weeks, right? But my coworker's wife had a baby, so we picked up his slack. Like, that's what it's like, but you got to communicate to each other. Like, this is what's going on. So that's what we do with our students.
So the practitioners teaching the class, do they know how to teach already? Like, do you teach them how to teach?
Most of them, like, and I tell them, I go, you probably don't know how to teach, right? So We work with our Center of Teaching and Learning, even learning how to use Canvas, which is the learning management system. They take a class on that. And that, like our first year faculty, I helped them quite a bit. So I think all my degrees are in education, curriculum design, and a lot of the classes I help them build it. Like we do it together. I help them. We work with a learning designer, but I'm not like there's some of my faculty have been doing it so long. I'm like, how you doing? I check in with them like every 3 weeks. I get the thumbs up. We're great. But some of my other faculty the first year is after the first 3 weeks, they're like, oh, this is great. I got it. Right. And then our students take a class with me, the first class, and they know what a class should look like. So I tell them, like, if your current class isn't running like this, let me know. That means I need to coach up that faculty member. Right. And I tell the faculty members, I'm your coach. I'm going to coach you up. You all have a different style, and I don't want to suppress that, but these are certain things we have, expectations we have in the classes that you need to meet these things, but you can present them in different ways, but you still have to do it.
Do they create the curriculum?
So we work together. I always tell our faculty, like, I'm going to suggest a textbook. That is not the Bible. That is the guide. It kind of helps keep you organized to go along, helps the students, but you're going to add the color to that, right? Add your experience to that. Tell students what's really going on. The textbook can only tell you so much. And most of the time, the textbooks aren't written by practitioners or researchers, which they give you a baseline, but then you're telling them that this is what's really going on. And then they give them the students projects and assignments that are usually real world applicable too.
Yeah, super interesting. Case studies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've written like 5 case studies that I use in my classroom there's situations that I dealt with along my career, and I just knocked them out and wrote them out and made them into case studies for the students.
No, that's excellent.
So,
I just wonder, because I always thought if I taught a class, okay, so the classes I used to like as a student, MBA most recently, master's 20 years ago, the classes I liked is where we discussed stuff.
yes.
I just wanted to talk and discuss back and forth, sharpening each other, back and forth with the professor, presentations, back and forth, group work, presentation, talk, discuss, right?
And I think that's a lot of what we do in our program. We even set up the room that you're like in a U. We only need 20 students in a classroom. So you're going to read stuff and then you're going to talk about it. Or I'll be like, I'll send a link out like 2 hours before the class. I'm like, hey, check out this article. I go, this happened yesterday, this weekend. I want to talk about this in class. Like, I want to hear what you have to say. Because I have students that are right out of college, and I have students that are 50 years old throughout this program. And we have student athletes, like their perspective on what they think of things is very enlightening even to me. Because their thought process and how they see things are very different than how I was raised. And I tell students all the time, I said, even where we come from, like I was raised in New Jersey and I've lived in North Dakota and North Carolina, like all those places I've lived, people see things differently. And it's also based on where you're coming from. Maybe a football player sees something totally different than a field hockey player. And that's something too, I think, especially for the student athletes, when they start hearing like my football players start hearing how the field hockey team experiencing things, they're like, oh, we are not equal. I'm like, no, but they don't have those conversations. Their teams are usually very siloed in the athletic department. So when in their class, it's very eye-opening, I think, for the students. And then I think for some students who are never a student athlete, to really hear what a day is like of a student athlete, and they're sitting there at 6:30 at night and they've been up since 5 in the morning, I think it's eye-opening for them too.
Yeah, which is interesting. Now I remember when I was coming up industry adjacent, right, in terms of college athletics, and then working at the Football Coaches Association, when I would see other sport management programs, they didn't focus on college athletics a lot. And I started thinking, is that most programs around the country, do they not, or they spend a little bit of time, but college athletics isn't the focus? I imagine at a program that's run by someone who spent a long time in college athletics, is there a heavy emphasis? Do people go out and get jobs in college athletics around the country? Tell me about the outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, we have students everywhere. I think too, we have faculty that work in college athletics, but we have a sports security class that's taught by a former FBI agent. They handled the Boston Marathon bombing, and he manages all the Detroit sports properties security now. So we are looking at areas in sports I don't think people are looking at. A student, because of the work he did with Mike teaching that class, and Evolve is a sport technology company. One of our students just got hired by Evolve, and it's a sport safety technology company, right? So, but we try to expose the students to a little bit of everything. I work with AstroTurf. So AstroTurf is actually coming up in 2 weeks to talk to our facilities and events class about what AstroTurf does and how it works and everything. And then they took me and 2 students last year. They flew us down to Georgia to their headquarters, and the students got to meet all the people at AstroTurf, from the marketing and sales all the way down to the plant, to see how it was made. University of Tennessee works at AstroTurf and FIFA. They have like a turf farm. So we went over there and they talked about like all the different ways they make turf. It was really cool. So like, and that helped another student because his connection with the guy from AstroTurf, he goes, oh, I service at school. You're applying for a job there? He spent 4 days with a student, like real little together before. He goes, let me call him for you. And the student got the job there, right? So that's where I tell students, these connections are going to last you for a lifetime. Like, you got to nurture your connections too. That's part of it.
And people don't understand. Some people are like, why would I want to have a connection to AstroTurf? I don't want to work there. But they don't understand the connections to the connections.
Yeah,
right?
AstroTurf is like Boston College. All their fields are AstroTurf. Yeah. So his name's Anthony Mealy. And I've known Anthony since we were in college, right? He was a goalie on the men's lacrosse team. He services Liberty University, Coastal Carolina, like
he's gonna know people at these schools,
all these schools. So like, he knows all their athletic facilities and events people. So when they're hiring a new person, Anthony knows my students. He knows me. If I tell Anthony like, hey, this student's great, he'll call down there for them. Like, hey, I know someone. Can you pull their resume like this? And that's a lot of times I tell students. I said, when you're applying for jobs, there's a huge stack of resumes, right? Usually yours won't get looked at unless someone calls on your behalf or sends an email. So that's even just having Anthony call and say, hey, can you pull out Jane Doe out of that pile and just take a look at her? Because there's a one touch of separation there. That gives you a much better chance of getting a job.
Do you have many students working on campuses?
Yeah, so we partner with Harvard. So Harvard has a really amazing internship program. The students work 40 hours a week and get paid. So we probably have, of the 9 paid interns they have, I think 6 of them are Boston College students. And the students love their experience there. And the Harvard athletic staff, they come over and talk to our students. We have a good relationship with them. And then Mike Lynch is the athletic director of Babson College, is D3 school. He teaches our athletic director class, and we have students interning over at Babson as well. And then, of course, we have students all over BC.
Yeah. And so have you had, how many cohorts have you had so far? You said 2021?
I don't know. We're like, since I've been there, and students can come, they can come fall, spring, or summer.
Oh, okay. So you have a bunch of different.
Our biggest class is usually in the fall.
And so our students, so I imagine getting those experiences while being a student lead to jobs on campuses. So I imagine you have people working on campuses around the country.
Yes.
Or at least in the area.
Yeah. Well, we have, and just even
not students, graduates work.
Yeah. We have alumni, working almost from University of Maine to MIT to Babson itself. We have several students working at Brown, so University of Rhode Island, but we have students who are working at, we had a student who worked at Wake Forest. BC actually hired her back. She was a GA at BC. She went down to Wake Forest for 2 years, and the position opened up at BC, and they said, Haley, you did such a great job as a GA. Come back. So now she's working at BC. We also have a partnership with Stonehill. I have a grad assistant there. So Stonehill went from being Division II to Division I. So they're hiring. So they're reaching out to me like, hey, we have these positions. Send us some resumes. What do you got? Right. So that's something really good that we like. And then we have students who work for Major League Baseball.
All over the place.
Huddle, the Texans, San Francisco 49ers, and Milwaukee Brewers. Like, how we have it set up is that our program is 18 months, but you're on the ground at BC for a year. The last thing you do is that internship or action research project and one online class. So you don't have to stay in Boston. So that internship that you really want to do, you don't get one maybe with the Red Sox, but the one opens up at the Florida Marlins, they can pick up and go.
Yeah.
Right. And we do have like so many students working for the Red Sox. I probably have like 6 former students working for the Patriots. We have 1 working for the Celtics, but we have students working for the Milwaukee Bucks and the Seattle Kraken. We have students working for the Bruins, but the Florida Panthers. So as I tell students, in sports, you got to be willing and able to pick up and move. You're not all going to get a job in Boston.
Right. Ask a couple questions here, then we'll wrap. First question relative to the program is, how do you, and then how does the school measure outcomes for success with the program?
Yeah.
Is it getting people jobs? Is it people graduating? And then how does the school look at, what the outcomes are?
I look at the students getting jobs, right? Like, I really hope that within 6 months of graduation, our students have a job. And I do a lot to help some of our students. Some need a little extra help than others. And then I think it's funny, my new dean was the associate dean a long time ago when they made the program. And he said to me, he started again, he came back to our school and started in August. He's like, Patty, when they created this program, it was never supposed to really be for outside people. It was really supposed to be for some BC staff and the the fifth year student athletes. And he goes, what you've grown it into is pretty amazing. So I think I've really surprised people at BC that we've grown so much. We have about 189 students in our program. And then, I think only like 10% are internal.
Oh,
that I'm recruiting all these students to come, and that they didn't really have much of outcomes for me. They're kind of just like, wow, this is something pretty cool that you're doing over here. So that's why we're launching a master's in sport analytics, because we see in the world of data, and that data is telling that story and driving decisions. So we need people that know how to really interpret the
right.
data.
I'm going to ask you about that. One last question. Are most of the students from this area of the country, or
No,
are they from all over?
I have students from all over the country. I have students from all over the globe. We have students from Canada, from Ireland, from England, from China.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
So the Masters of Science in Data Analytics, is that what she said?
A Master's of Science in Sport Analytics.
Sport Analytics, which is excellent. Us being here at the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, that's relative to where we are now. Tell me about the impetus for that program, and is that something that you hired somebody to run it, or did the school hire? Tell me about that.
So we had a certificate in sport analytics that was pretty popular. We had students we have an applied analytics program that we're doing the certificate, and we had students in sports administration doing the certificate. And the more I got involved with the person teaching the certificate, our sport analytics class, his name's Greg Crowd, he works for Navigate. And I look at jobs constantly. I kind of keep my eye on the radar. Like, what are the new jobs? Like, the general manager job is a new job in college sports, right? But sport analytics, business intelligence analyst jobs, they're growing and they're abundant. I said, this is a field we need to really start looking at, and really start getting people trained to know how to do R and Python and all the programming, but also understand the context of sports, and I think some of it's the people skills too, right? You can know data all day, but if you can't tell the story of the data and how it applies and how you can use it to make decisions, it's not going to really help you that much. So that's what we really did. So we already had the applied analytics program. We had and that's successful too. And we've applied a really good successful sports administration. I said, well, we can pull from both and make this program. So that's what we did. So, the school just said, okay, start rolling this out here. So we haven't even got Greg is our current instructor that teaches our sport analytics class. We have someone that actually teaches a more sports-centric class in applied analytics. And then we have an advisory board, but we haven't hired anyone. That's the next thing. Is my hope is after the first year we get like 10 students, we're going to hire a program director or coordinator to just manage the sport analytics piece. Because I'll be honest, everyone, that is not my wheelhouse. I understand it as important stuff, but that's why I'm here. I don't have the connections in this world like I do in my other worlds. I mean, that's part of our program, is those connections. So we want to pull someone from that world to help really manage that program.
Yeah, what's interesting, I was talking to a young woman, she's a sophomore at a school around here somewhere, and come to this conference. And she was like, I came because I want to know if I was interested in working in sports, but I don't know if I know enough about different sports to work in analytics. And I was like, you're probably thinking of it as like stats for the specific sport. And I'm like, no.
I mean, that's one of the things. There was a volleyball thing here, and someone asked and I know volleyball pretty well now. Someone asked a question. I was like, well, if you run a different rotation, then you won't have that problem. But there's so many things that analytics are touching, sports from revenue generation, who are marketing to
all the
data
things, yeah.
on like health analytics, like the country they're in Boston. So every Boston College student athlete has a Whoop watch. So then all that data, how are our strength coaches and our nutritionists and all the people using that data, some of it's a little intrusive to me, but like knowing that your student athlete isn't sleeping. So maybe like, let's start talking to them like, all right, we see the data, your times have gone down in track, and we also notice you're not sleeping as much. Like maybe if we really try and work on your sleep schedule, that might help you be more successful on track. But that's from the data, right? And then there's data right now with like women's sports blowing up. People are watching women's sports and the data is showing this, but trying to get the advertisers and the sponsors to really dig into that data, the show you should be spending your sponsorship dollars on women's sports, I think has been a little bit of a struggle too, right?
Yeah, it has. The one thing I wanted to point out to her, and I didn't have time to explain it to her, but like Kevin Blue used to be at
Yes.
UC Davis. I mean, him at Stanford had an internal consulting group that would go to each department within athletics and use data to help improve the department, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, you don't have to know about a specific sport to use data and to be somebody who an athletics department can find value in for studying data. So I think that's important. When you talk about the program, how will you, like we just basically said, there's so many ways you can use data. How will you decide what to focus on within the program? I guess it depends on the practitioners you hire to teach. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, I think we're really teach them how to the baseline, the data first, right?
Okay.
And then they are taking like our sports finance class and our sports marketing class because data really inform. They're also taking our sports leadership class and our ethics class because some of this, the ethical piece of the data is really important too. And then they get to choose some of their other classes.
Do you have a sports performance type class?
We have a coaching for performance class that they could take, right? So we have a health and wellness and sports class that actually Dr. Ramos does like 2 whole sections alone just on biometric data on that. So that's where, part of that's the advising piece. And that's me digging down and talking about, what are you interested in? Or even talk to students like, one of these classes should not be in your wheelhouse. So you're exposed to something new. So we do a lot of that.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think the program, like you mentioned, has grown. It's only been 4 or 5 years, right?
Since so we're ranked number 14 and number 21, 14 domestically and 21 international.
Yeah, that's excellent. And then this sports analytics program will just make it even greater. I'm sure they're happy to have you there at Boston College. I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. That was Dr. Patricia Raube Keller. She is the program director at Boston College for Sport Administration.
Yep.
Right? Said that right? Okay. And of course, I am Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.